Isn't that it right there?
Right here. If I can get my lighter to work. It is a two-step process, and I'm failing at it. Okay, so what we're going to do, because today is about imagination. So I want all of you to imagine the flame. Okay? We light this flame for imagination and inspiration, because that's what today is all about, the magic of imagination and inspiration. So now, at this moment, we'll begin our centering. So just take a moment, sit back, close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. Take a deep breath and release. Letting go all of the stuff it took to get you here this morning. And taking another deep breath, release everything else that is in your mind and come to this moment.
Thank you, Mary. That puts us in the mood for this morning because it gives us the chance to call our attention to the universe, to the one mind, the one power that is there. So let's think of that now. Let's close our eyes for a moment and smile within, because we know that the world is with us if we are with the world. And we know now, as we come together, and come together in a way that makes it known that this summer has been the summer of relief. This is the summer that we create. This is the summer that those things that went before us that we did not favor are now in our favor because they have changed. They have changed incredibly. People are now speaking to one another. They are out of their houses and they are communicating and they are having a wonderful time knowing that the world is all one. So let's know now as we come together that God is with us, that God is here, and that we are together. Thinking this now in our minds, just say together silent with me as I say, and so it is, so it is. And now, welcome to everybody today. I'm very happy to see you here. I would say that you have smiling faces, and I know you do, because underneath your mask, I can see when the eyes go up like that. We have a reading this morning, and it goes like this. Do you remember the story Jesus told about the woman who came to a judge asking for help? At first, the judge refused her request because he was comfortably settled with his family, and he didn't wish to be disturbed. That was his family time. Do you remember how persistent this woman was? She refused to take no for an answer. She just kept on knocking at the door. She kept knocking until her faith and determination were rewarded. Now, this is the story of your life. This is the story of your life, of every inch of everyone's life. Just keep right on knocking. Just keep right on knocking at the doorway of your consciousness until every no becomes a yes. Every negative an affirmation. Every fear, a faith. You cannot fail if you remain steadfast. Finally, the fetters of bondage will drop from you. You will walk out of your self-imposed prison only to discover that a door was never really locked and the windows were not actually boarded. You were bound merely by chains of disbelief. That's what it was. If you listen to peace, you will experience it. If you listen for truth, you will hear it. If you listen to power, you will receive it. If you listen to wholeness, you will discover it. This is the creative law. And this you have available to you right now, right in front of you. I'm called Brad Weathern, and this is Ernest Holmes. I thank you very much. Yep, okay, I'm going to go this way.
That's cool. Thank you, Brad. So I found this stick in my garage. But is it a stick? Or is it a conductor's baton? Or is it a magic wand? Or is it a baton? Right? And if I do this, and I stick this other weird thing that I found in my house on the top, it is now a queen's scepter. That's imagination. So the other thing that we're talking about today is inspiration. And inspiration looks like this. And now Jeff is the king for the day, because we are so grateful that Jeff is here every single Sunday, giving us music that opens our hearts. So imagination is a mental thing. It's in our mind and we stretch it as far as possible. But inspiration comes from a different place. It comes from spirit, from a place of principle, and it warms our hearts. Now, when I was showing you the stick, you notice, that's a mental thing, an imagination, and we stretch that, and you were thinking, well, what would I do with the stick? But when we put the crown on Jeff, you weren't really thinking anything, you were feeling, right? That's the difference of imagination and inspiration. So we're going to talk a little bit about imagination first, and what it looks like, and all of that kind of stuff. An example, so we're not kids and we don't have the sticks anymore, but as adults, we still do imagination. We still stretch our minds. I was thinking about what's so great about imagination. When was like the most imaginative thing that I can think of that I participated in? Well, those of you who have been on the board or are on the board, you realize fundraisers take a lot of imagination to create something that's actually going to bring in some money. Work parties take imagination. Parties at home, projects at work take imagination. So I was thinking, as an example, many years ago, a group of us were sitting around one Friday night having some wine, and we said, well, we really need to do a fundraiser. But it was Friday night, we were having wine, and the last thing we wanted to do was work, right? So we thought, what can we do that's not work? Because we had had a rummage sale, and oh my gosh, those are a lot of work. So forget that one. We weren't into that. Bake sales is a little more fun, but you don't get much from it. So what can we do that's fun that can make us a bunch of money? So we decided to have a wine tasting garden party because wine symbolizes fun and relaxation, right? And in the garden, that's relaxing too. And we thought, okay, we can make this. And then, so 5 of us started out. And of course, every planning meeting had to have a glass of wine, right? Pretty soon we weren't 5 of us. There were 12 of us, because who doesn't want to go to a planning party where you're having wine and throwing out ideas? So there were 12 of us, and people would just throw out ideas. And I was taking notes. And of course, sometimes people throw out ideas where you go, oh, really? But I kept my mouth shut and I just wrote it down. Wrote them down. And after everybody exhausted their minds on what we could possibly add to this garden party, we started going down the list and talking about how we could make those ideas really happen. And all of these minds start talking about that. And if there's anything on the list that we couldn't figure out, it didn't get crossed off. It got held over to the next meeting. By the time we got done planning, and we had a 6-month period, by the time, and you know, that requires like 6-10 planning meetings with wine. So, and the top priority was fun. We were not going to do anything where we weren't having fun. And as soon as it stopped being fun, we said, okay, meeting's over, or this part's over, we're going home. By the time we got to the event, like I said, there were 12 of us. All of the ideas that had been thrown out were put into action. Every single one of them, we figured out how we could do it. By the time the event came, it was a 1-day event. We netted $8,000 in the 1-day event. And the reason that happened, I believe, is because we were having fun. The event was fun, the planning was fun, the setup was fun. I think there was one incident where somebody started, getting a little huffy, and we said, hey, time for you to go home and relax. Because the rest of us are having fun, So it went along that way. So imagination is about having fun. Now, it's easy for kids to imagine all kinds of things. A little harder for us adults. That's because we get these messages, get real. Who do you think you are? All of these kinds of things. And we kind of, even the kids say that to each other. Really? Get real. What planet are you from? And that sort of discourages our imagination. I remember, when I was about 10, I used to get together with some friends during recess and we'd write ghost stories. And I wrote one story that I was really proud of. It was about a little girl whose little baby sister had died, and she was really, really sad. And nobody really noticed her, so she decided she was going to run away. And that's where the story ended. She ran away. And I gave it to my mother, and my mother read it, and she said, so what happens to the little girl? I said, well, I don't know. I'm only 10 and I haven't run away. So I really don't know what happened to her. What do you think would happen to her? And she said, well, that's not right. You're the author of this story. You have to tell people, what happened exactly. You can't leave it up to their imagination. I stopped writing stories at that point. And I remember when my son was about the same age, he came home from school one day and he said, my friend Richie builds rockets that go into outer space. I went, yeah, he's 9, 10. Okay, Nick, are you sure they don't just, outer space is like 30, 40 feet? Because, with those rocket kits. He goes, no, Mom, it's not like one of those kits. They go into outer space and Richie makes them. It was all I could do to not say, that's ridiculous. No 9-year-old makes rockets that go into outer space. I caught myself and I just said, that's very interesting. That's very interesting, wonderful for him. Because so often we don't. We stop that, we say, that's ridiculous. If I had told Nick that was ridiculous, I think he would have stopped doing his engineering plans, like putting wires in the sink to see if he could separate the oxygen and the hydrogen, because he was going to make a new motor for cars. So kids have that imagination, and if we stop it, like in adults, we forget about that. We forget about what that imagination should look like. So imagination is what we do spiritually or in churches for imagination is we do visualization. Not to be confused with visioning, okay? We do visualization. So I want you to take just a moment right here, close your eyes. Picture a plate of lemon wedges in front of you. Now pick one of those wedges up, kind of smell it, and take a bite. Okay, now open your eyes. How many of you could feel this or taste the sourness and feel the juices going through your mouth? That's visualization. And it's very, very powerful. Our imaginations are very powerful. I remember sitting in this sanctuary one time doing a workshop with Kevin Sorrell on visualization. And my visualization was the feelings I would have walking into a clean garage. If your garage looks like mine, you can get that. So I just did all this visualization about walking into a clean garage. Everything was neat. It felt good. I could move the car in. It was spacious. So I left the workshop, went home, pulled in the driveway, and my husband was cleaning the garage. So it's very, very powerful. It works for us if we can do that. So why, as adults, do we really feel like imagination's important? Well, first of all, it's fun, right? Any of you that planned a party, it's fun to plan a party. Definitely fun, and the more fun you keep in it, the more imaginative you get. But there's a lot of other reasons. Imagination is good for problem solving. As Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. So we have to expand our minds. Einstein also said, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there will ever be to know and understand. And he also said, imagine that logic can get you from A to B, but imagination can get you everywhere. Scientific studies have shown that teams that are more mixed, more diverse, create the greatest success. Because if you get a team where everybody thinks alike, you're not going to come up with anything new. you'll have that same mindset. You might as well not have a team if everybody thinks the same. But if you get a team where people think differently, and as you can imagine, when we had 12 people, we had different ways of thinking about things. Different life experiences get pulled into that. And our imaginations are a mental thing, and they can only go so far as we have experienced and have pictures of. But if there's things out there, and we all know there are things out there that we have never experienced, like a 10-year-old, what happens when somebody runs away? I don't know, So the more diverse you are, the greater your imagination can expand. Imagination can also create our future. It creates the life you're going to have. So Ernest Holmes says, and follow me for a minute on this because Ernest Holmes is not always easy. He says, the limit of our ability to demonstrate depends upon our ability to provide a mental equivalent of our desires, for the law of correspondence works from the belief to the thing. So let's digest that. What the heck is a mental equivalent? Those of you taking lots of classes, you've got it. But basically, mental equivalent is no more than our imagination and our belief in that these possibilities are real. So your mental equivalent basically is the boundaries of your imagination. And the law of correspondence simply means that there is a spiritual possibility or prototype for everything that happens on earth as it is in heaven, basically. So what that quote means is our life and what we can manifest is totally dependent on our imagination and our belief in that imagination. Because in spirit, in this law of correspondence, there are limitless possibilities, infinity possibilities. So that's all that quote really means, is you can only manifest what you can imagine and believe in. So that's a good reason to expand our imagination, right? Because it opens us to new possibilities. Another thing that imagination does is it gives us passion. Passion, you can only, a passion is your level of commitment to your work. And if you can imagine all the goodness in whatever work you're doing, no matter what your job is, it gives you the passion for your work. It turns your job into a career, into a vocation. So you can allow your imagination to give you that passion and that joy into your job. And then finally, what imagination does is and this is a really important one for many of us here, it makes us relevant. It keeps us young. So our imagination, as I was saying, it's based on experience. And we have so much experience. And as we age, we have more and more experience. So we go, okay, this is my mental equivalent. I have this circle. But the youth, they're still creating experience. So they're not depending on their past experience because there's not enough of it. So they keep on expanding and creating. And if we don't stay open to that expansion and creation, we lose our relevancy on this planet and we become old folks. So imagination can keep us young. So how do we do it? So we've learned some good reasons. It's fun. It helps us problem solve. It creates our future. It gives us passion and keeps us relevant. So how do we do it? Well, as I mentioned, one of the things we want to do is keep finding ways through people, through books, through Google and YouTube to expand our experiences, expand the things that we see as possible. So we need to continually be expanding ourselves, reading, being with people, especially people, because they bring it to life. And when you sit with someone who's not like you, you're going to get a lot of other ideas. And if you can stay open to those ideas, they become part of your ideas. So that's one way how. And another way is through visualization, as we spoke. Okay. So now that we've talked about imagination, let's talk about inspiration. Imagination is a mental thing, as we've been saying, and inspiration comes from someplace else, something greater than this little brain in here. It comes from spirit, inspire, inspiration, in spirit. It comes from a place of principle, oneness and love, abundance, peace. Some of those principles, like peace and abundance, we have a hard time with in our imagination. Spirit does not have any hard time with those. So we need that inspiration to help. When we put the crown on Jeff's head, we felt it. We didn't think it. We felt it because all we feel is gratitude and love, right? That's inspiration. Artists are inspired by all kinds of things. You know, somebody may do a beautiful painting and when asked, you know, what inspired you to do this beautiful painting of this garden, they'll go, well, that little child over there playing with a flower inspired me to do this. Or somebody riding a bicycle made me think of freedom, and then I wrote, you know, painted Starry, Starry Nights. Maybe that, who knows what Van Gogh, what inspired him to do that. So inspiration just comes from that very different place. And while imagination we can visualize, inspiration we vision. And how many of you have ever visioned? Visioning is where we sit. We used to do it every morning before service. Way back, Reverend Pat and then Reverend Miriam used to lead us into a visioning where we would just sit in quiet and ask Spirit what greater good it has in mind for us or the center. So inspiration and visioning requires being still. We work our imagination, inspiration works us. It requires being still. Now, Michael Beckwith from Agape designed a series of questions you can ask to kind of lead you through a visioning, but you don't have to follow those. Because all visioning is sitting still and asking Spirit what Spirit wants, what it knows. When I sit down to do a talk, a Sunday talk or a Wednesday, first thing I do is I vision. Because I know that there is nobody else on this planet that thinks the way I do. And if I design a talk for me, it not necessarily would speak to anybody else. So I ask Spirit, what does the people who are going to be here, whoever happens to show up, Spirit knows who's going to show up. So whoever's going to show up, what do they need to hear? What do they want to hear? What can they use? And Spirit tells me, and then I start writing. But not without that first, because the inspiration requires. And that's leads us into the final part. The title of my talk is When Inspiration and Imagination Collide. So what happens when the two collide? We expand our imagination, inspiration comes in, and we do things that are greater than anything we thought possible. We do things that have results that we don't even know they're going to have those results. An example of that is my sister Lou. And Lou is a tech entrepreneur. And when she retired, she still wanted to stay in tech, and she wanted to bring technology to people who couldn't afford it, to people who are underrepresented, and don't have the connections, the money, the attorneys, all of that, to market and do all that's legally required to get their idea out there. So she started a company, and she started bringing in people who had ideas and connecting them with people who could help them. Lou also likes to travel because it expands her mental equivalent, and she enjoys it. So she goes to all kinds of countries, and she particularly loves going to third world countries because they're really different from anything we know. And she learned so much. So she was in Uzbekistan and some of the other stands that surround it. And she's saying, how can we bring technology to this third world country? And she says, well, we can teach it to them. Well, who are we going to teach it to? The men are doing their thing and the women are at home with the kids. And she says, well, the most underrepresented are women. We'll teach women. Well, the women can't go outside of their homes. And Spirit said, what the heck? Let's bring the technology into their homes so they don't have to go anywhere. So they began a program to teach coding to women in third world countries that can't leave their homes. So they could sit at home on their computers, which were provided, and learn to code, and thereby create income for their families and still abide by the cultural norms. They didn't have to disobey their husbands by going out into the world in public and going to class. They sat at home and did this. So everybody kept their self-respect. Women's went up and the men's are going up too because they're prospering and abiding by the culture. Something that no one thought of at the time that we started the program was that in these same countries, women who lose their husbands for any reason, whether it's death or divorce or whatever it is, they don't get to keep their children because they don't have the finances to take care of them. And they don't allow other people just to support them. They just don't get to keep their children. But now women who have jobs do get to keep their children. So all of these women that are learning technology at home on their computers, no matter what happens in their life, can keep their family together. That was beyond imagination. Inspiration created that. That's what happens when inspiration and imagination collide. So why do we here, we're not going to go to Uzbekistan and create coding programs. Why do we want inspiration to collide with our imagination? Each person here, why would you want that to happen? Well, folks, we can talk about peace on earth and abundance for everybody and equality for everybody. But it isn't going to happen unless our consciousness can rise to the level of our technical knowledge. And by colliding our imagination with inspiration, we raise our consciousness. Where the two, our consciousness and our knowledge, can reside on equal levels. And our consciousness can say, what should we do with our knowledge? Rather than our knowledge running amok without any spiritual input. So colliding this is our only way to close that gap. Colliding our inspiration and imagination is the only way to create a better life in our immediate circle, in our cities, in our country, and on this planet at large. It's the only way. So I ask you today, you can walk out of this sanctuary today and say, well, that was interesting. Yeah, I remember playing with sticks when I was a kid. And then you can sort of forget about it as you go around your week. Go to work or do whatever you're doing. Or you can ask yourself, where will I allow my imagination to go this week? Who will I include in my circle to expand my imagination? What will I do to allow inspiration to be heard by me and accepted by me? And can I find a moment where I let my imagination and that inspiration to collide? Because when they collide, there is a geyser of joy and peace and abundance within ourselves and around us. So how will you use this week? Where will your imagination be, your inspiration? But whatever you do, have fun doing it. Thank you. So let's take a moment for prayer. So we sit here in this moment, opening ourselves to that inspiration that is always there and available. Grace is always flowing. We can actually see that inspiration there waiting. And we open our minds of imagination. We open our hearts for the fun and the joy of it. We celebrate this life. We celebrate the fact of all possibilities being available. All we have to do is accept and believe. There is magic in this world. There are miracles. There is all this and more. So we take this moment to commit ourselves to being open, to being that full expression of God within us coming out of us. And we say, thank you. Thank you, Spirit, for the continuous flow of grace, the continuous flow of all of this possibility. Thank you. Thank you. I accept. And so it is. So we have an affirmation today. I will read it to you. It's simple enough, and then we can say it together. And I'm going to step away from that mic so we don't have an echo. Our affirmation is, I create my life through my imagination and God's inspiration. Let's say it together. I create my life through my imagination and God's inspiration. One more time. I create my life through my imagination and God's inspiration. And now, we have our prosperity. Use your imagination when you're saying this. And let's say our affirmation together. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am prosperous now. And remember, prosperity is not just money. It's prosperity of everything. And the baskets will be at the end of the aisles as you leave. Okay. And invitations. Okay. We do this a little bit different now because we don't have our soloists and the practitioners coming back up. In 2 weeks, Reverend Tracy is going to do a presentation, that's September 5th, which is sort of a potpourri. And she will answer thoughts or questions or any topic you would like her to speak on. And there should be a box outside that you can put your thoughts in about what you'd like her to talk about. So think about it. You have this week and next Sunday to put your thoughts in about anything you would like her to talk about. So that will be in 2 weeks. And next week, you get me again, and we'll imagine what we'll talk about. And let's see, I'm looking at our things. So at this point, we get in a closing circle. I don't think did I leave anything out for anybody? Nope. Okay, let's move to the aisles. And pardon? He's going to play us out. Yeah. We do not have a soloist today. We will have a soloist next week, right? It's the 29th. Okay. And then we will have a soloist on the 12th for sure. Yes.
Yes.